Thank you all for joining us today on this podcast, Stories of Strength. And in this podcast, we interview amazing people about how they use their own internal strength to overcome any adversities or obstacles in their life. And why I'm excited about this podcast is because while these stories are uniquely their own, there is such a great opportunity for us to find community within each other and inspiration for us to find our own inner strength to overcome, our own adversities or obstacles in our own lives. To be able to do that in somebody else's story, I think is ideal because we have access to a lot of these stories, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. And there's such a tendency to focus on the negative stories that are being pushed through on those social media networks. And to be able to speak with somebody like Lauren, who we have here, who is doing amazing things. Is writing, she's an illustrator, she's sold books. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, I want to talk to Lauren about her life leading up to everything she's doing today. So Lauren, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
Awesome. Our first question, Lauren, can you share with us your story of strength?
Well, I was born 30 years ago in Houston, Texas, where you are.
Yes, we love Houston.
I have undiagnosed cerebral palsy. I was never officially diagnosed. And when I was growing up, they had stories about kids, but not necessarily kids like me. How are kids supposed to relate when they can't see themselves in books or movies?
I'm going to ask you a question right here. I'm going to ask you to press pause. You said that there were stories about kids, but not kids like you. And I want to pause here because a lot of people feel this way, right? Like if you're African American or Hispanic, or if you're whatever, too tall, too short, whatever it is, right? There seems to be a narrative pushed in our culture where everybody has to look, act, talk, behave the same way. So how you're feeling, right, when you saw these stories, I can definitely say that you're not alone.
And I wasn't alone. I had other friends like me that felt the same way I did. Like we had nothing to relate to.
What were you thinking when you saw that over and over again? You saw all these stories or movies or whatever. You're like, hey, there's nobody I can relate to. What's going on in your mind?
Well, I wasn't really a reader when I was growing up, but I noticed the books that my brother and sister read were not like books, like they were all perfect kids, and they fixed the problem, and that's not how life works.
That's definitely understandable. And this, I guess, question means a lot to you, or this concern means a lot, because I'm going to assume you had a lot of experiences that you and your friends were going through in your lives that nobody else was seeming to understand.
Yeah, and I noticed it today, like being 30 years old, there's little resources for people like me to relate to. Not like every show should be about disabled people, but some should. There's a show on ABC. It's called Speechless, and they do a pretty good job with. It's about a boy with cerebral palsy who has to speak through a machine called a Dynavox, and they do a pretty good job minding the issue of cerebral palsy.
What do you wish you would see more of, when it comes to society? Like, what do you wish you would see more of happening when it comes to inclusion across all groups?
Society needs to see the whole perspective on everyone, blacks, whites, gays, the disabled community. It's not one minority group, it's a lot of minority groups that are not represented equally.
Absolutely. And I know we talked about this, not liking the word inspiration. And I said this briefly before we got on air. There seems to be a common trait in people who are making a big impact or people who want to make a big impact, there's this element of humility there. Almost. Well, that's what I call it. It's humility where it's like, I'm not sure you all realize how big your life is and how meaningful it can be to people. I actually had two visitors in the office. No lie. They sat on our couch that we have in our office, and we have a little coffee table. And on that coffee table, we have your book, In Kayla's World, there. And they started reading it. This was after our meeting. They started reading it, and one of the women who was reading the book started crying. And she was like,
Oh,
yeah, she was like, who is this? I was like, oh my goodness, this is Lauren McGowan. I'm actually going to speak to her here in a couple minutes. And the story was just so touching to her. And come to find out, I didn't know this, but come to find out, there are things that she's dealing with medically as well. Just those moments, like they're just amazing moments. I know the more people that can hear about what everybody's doing, what you're writing about, I just know the more good is going to come out of it.
but it's not always easy. Like whenever I do my illustrations, like I have to create illustrations, and I'm not that artistic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard. I would say the words are easier for me than the pictures.
So the pictures are difficult. Is it like a creative thing? Is it a motor skill thing? What makes the drawing hard?
Well, I think it's creativity and motor skills.
What then gives you that motivation? Because I want to talk about the book itself, but before that, what gives you that motivation then to power through that and really, because I mean, really the easy way would be, well, let me just have somebody else illustrate this for me,
Well,
right?
yeah, I wanted to do that, but my parents made me illustrate it. But, I guess it all goes down to Miss Kayla, how her love for life was so empowered me.
Mm.
She was like the happiest, most determined person I ever met in my life.
So let's talk about that for a second. So you told us diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Instead of really focusing on the negatives, you were seeing in society an opportunity really to bring something to the world that's not really commonly done. And that was through your writing and through your illustration. We want to talk about In Kayla's World. This is your first book or your second book?
This is my first book that I have right here.
Your first book. Can you tell us the inspiration behind In Kayla's World?
Losing my friend at 23 because of a massive heart attack. And I wanted to keep her spirit alive. So what better way to keep her spirit alive than writing a book? And one day this book is going to inspire a whole lot of kids with disabilities. So they know they have a voice.
Yeah, I wouldn't even limit to kids. I know there's a page in there where Kayla's in the classroom, and this is one of the pages that really spoke to me. And the teacher's response, at least in my opinion, that teacher could have used some education on maybe how to handle and really push the message that you're trying to push, right? Of inclusion. That's the story of Kayla. When you lost her, what was the time frame? Like when did you decide to, hey, let me go ahead and memorialize her memories in writing?
I think it was when I realized that I wasn't going to go far in college and needed another resource to build on.
Mm.
So in 2014, 2015, I realized, oh, I'm not going to go anywhere in college because it's so fast paced and cerebral palsy, you're constantly having to struggle to keep up. So I realized I was not going to do well in college. So I basically said, I'm done with college. And something came into my head one day. It was the strangest thing. It was like a dream. A character named a character with cerebral palsy for children, and I drew. I started to draw, which I never drew before in my life. I was like, I was like the person that had no creativity, but I drew. I started to draw, and I was like, "This is Kayla. This is Kayla in the character," and I was like so happy, and that really motivated me.
That is, oh my goodness, that's amazing. So you draw the character, you draw Kayla. So it started off with the illustration
Yeah,
first.
illustration came first.
Okay, so illustration came first. You connected with what you saw, and then what was the next step? What came to your mind next?
Then I have an amazing writing ability. I don't
Mhm.
read that well, but I can sure write, which is strange. But yeah, I can write. So I wrote. I took the only strength that I had of me and I put it on paper.
This was like a logical decision. The character was maybe an emotional moment, right? And then the decision to write was just a purely logical decision, or did you have a memory? Like, I'm just trying to understand what.
Well, the drawing was more like a memory. Like I wanted to keep Kayla's spirit alive because she was the most happiest, determined person I ever met in my life. And
Mhm.
the writing was definitely logical. I can write. Do anything good in my life, but write.
Hey, all you have to do, side note, I think that's the second time you said you only had one skill. I can scroll through your Instagram and completely disagree with you. You have done so much and continue to do so much. Um, but so when it came to
Of
your
course,
first,
I have more skills, but I'm talking about academic skills.
got it. No, that's fair.
So,
That's fair.
you know what I'm talking about? I mean, you understand, right?
Yeah,
Academic.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
In school, I'll never forget the time that I went to school in Pennsylvania when we moved up here. Where I'm from, I'm originally from Florida. And
Hmm.
I had to go to a social workshop where everybody was IDD, intellectual developmental disability.
Okay.
I went there and I was so heartbroken because I knew I wasn't like that.
Mm.
I still had to go there because my teacher made me. My teacher didn't understand the cerebral and what I was facing. And that's another reason why I wrote this book, so teachers may have a better understanding of their kids with physical disabilities.
You mentioned this in college, and this is a gripe that I have with education. I think education, it feels really antiquated and old, and it doesn't focus on practical learning. And you mentioned that college was structured in such a way that only certain types of people can succeed.
The one that the ones that have nothing wrong with their brains. Like my
Yeah.
sister and brother did really well in college. They got A's and B's all the way through. And I was different.
Yeah. And I don't know that I would even say nothing wrong with their brains. I just think that college, a lot of education is limited, and education formally hasn't learned the value of the value that individuality brings to the table, right? There's so many successful people, products, services, ideas that come from people who don't have formal education, who don't have any education at all. And more and more, we're seeing the divide, with formal education, and individual capability. And I don't want to turn this into a podcast against education, but it's more so the fact that, there's an institution that we have that completely missed somebody's talent. It completely missed your talent. And I just think it's a shame because I can only imagine, like, how many people does this happen to? You know what I mean? And I'm just so thankful that you're able to look past that and still do what you're doing today.
A lot of people misinterpreted it all because it was their physical impairment. And I wish there was something that someone could do to make them be more understood.
How did you come to the first set of stories in Kayla's world?
It was based on memory that I had as a kid. Like in my second book, Kayla is really frustrated because she can't ride that quickly, and she feels really slow. And that's how I felt as a kid. I felt slow because I was riding like my peers were. I want to share a quote that Kayla says in the book. It says, "I might be differently able, but I chose to accept what I cannot change to in order to look forward to my bright future."
The book is almost constructed like a lot of mini stories or like mini moments that made a really, a cohesive story. Do you have a favorite? Is there a favorite moment in the book that you like?
Yeah. When Kayla and Josh have a misunderstanding about running him over, that's
Mhm.
a personal experience that I have. My favorite personal experience because that happened to me. Great unexpected friendship started because of that.
You said these stories came from memory, but it looks like you take some creative freedom here and maybe you take some of your own stories, but you have Kayla experiencing them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I already told you what my favorite moment was with the teacher, just because I think it showed how much opportunity there is for us to learn, right, about how to handle different situations when it comes to all different types of cultures and abilities or what have you. So that was my favorite part of the book.
Thank you.
How many books have you sold so far of In Kayla's World?
I think I sold over 200.
My understanding that you have a second one in the works?
Yeah, I'm almost done with it. The friend with autism, and they become a friendship team, and they help each other out with their struggles. And then in the middle of the book, they get iPads, and the iPad changes their life.
How does it change your life?
For Kayla, she types faster. Frustration of writing slow is like a memory because all she has to do is type her assignments and she gets it done on time. And in the story, she takes a spelling test and she was always the last one done. But on this page, she's the first one done. Very first time she gets all the ones done before everybody else.
So is this a personal experience as well?
Personal experience. I typed slow and I was behind all my peers in school. That part is true.
Do you think an iPad would help you?
It would have helped when I was writing in school, yeah. I have an iPhone now, so yeah.
Of course, everybody has an iPhone, right?
On it.
So I like that you called them a friendship team because, as you probably might be aware, the superhero theme is really big right now. There's superhero movies everywhere. And when you said friendship team, it kind of gave me that feeling like they're almost like a dynamic duo. Is that kind of the case or?
Yeah, they're really close. Actually, my friend Brooke passed away too. Writing this in her honor too, as well as Kayla.
Awesome. So I wish we could know more about what was happening in the book. Can you give us another tidbit that might be happening in the book?
They have befriending Ryan. He has muscular dystrophy,
Hmm.
and he has a canine companion. Leslie the dog. She's a yellow lab. She's really cute.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited for this one. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. Is there anything that you would like to share or that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Just that the world needs to view people with disabilities in a more positive image. But that's another topic. That would take all day.
Right. Again, this is a common theme that we're going to see in our podcast in this series. Everybody so far that we've talked to has talked about that, and they've talked about really social media, right? Because that's where everybody is spending their time, about the positives and the negatives of social media. And, the imagery that's on there, the narrative that's on there, it contributes to a lot of negative stigmas, right? That plague our culture. And again, from race, income, social importance, mental health, physical health. It plays such a dynamic role. And to see the pages of the Good Neighbor RX community on Instagram, I mean, it's just so refreshing to see, real life people with real life problems sharing their story. And so we're so thankful that, that people like you and that you specifically take the time to do that, because you don't need to do that. Like, you don't need to share your story with people, but you do. Is it important for you to do that? Or
Not so much importance, but just it's more important to get a more positive image of children and people in general with disabilities to the world.
I think you're doing a great job. You're definitely, pushing the pendulum one swing closer in the right direction with what you're doing, with all of your efforts, with your story that you share on social, with your writing, with your creativity, and with your books. And we want to do our best to get your story out there, your personal story, but your actual book stories, both of those. We definitely want to push that, and we are so excited for this opportunity. Lauren, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much for interviewing me.
Oh, it was absolutely our pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.